Shabbat Shalom, friends. Sir Elton John, in the song Your Song, wrote about a deeply loved one. The sun's been kind while I wrote this song. It's for people like you that they keep it turned on. I love that lyric, to suggest that for the best people of the world, the sun keeps shining. My son did not know that song when he was 11 years old and asked me one day, "Mommy, do you know why the world keeps spinning?" And I said, "Why?" And he said, "Because people like my favorite teacher are in it." He had a teacher who believed in him so much, and he are going to have to forgive me that I'm not pulling her name up right now. He is almost 25 years old. His civics academy teacher. He just, with just all of the sweetness of a young boy who'd fallen a little bit in love with his teacher, he acknowledged that for kind people like that, the world would continue to turn. It was so sweet. And what he was channeling there, and what Sir Elton taps into in that sweet song, is the belief that there is goodness in the world, and that there are special people for whom the world merits to keep spinning, and the sun has the grace to keep shining. In Jewish tradition, we call those people the Lamed Vavnikim, the Lamed Vavniks, or the Tzadikim Nistarim, the 36 righteous people, or the hidden righteous ones. These people who walk the earth are critical to the existence of the human race. As long as they continue to exist, the earth continues to spin. The inspiration for this medieval idea has its roots, of course, in the Bible. In chapter 18 of Genesis, God debates with Abraham, announcing that he intended to visit the city of Sodom and Gomorrah because the outcry against their sins was very great. As you all know, Abraham interceded for the people, asking the Almighty if the city could be spared for the sake of 50, 45, 40, 30, 20, 10 people. For the sake of the few, God said he would spare the many. The inference is that in Sodom and Gomorrah there were not even 10 righteous people to save the city. But as the centuries went by, the notion that there is a number of good, decent, righteous people for whom the world merits another day, another era, is a compelling one. The number 36 was arrived at after many other options. In some places you'll see 72, some places you will see 50, some places even just 10. But the expression, the Lamed Vavniks, has its roots in really kind of a wonderful verse, actually a creative Talmudic interpretation of a verse in Isaiah chapter 30, verse 18, wherein Abaye, one of the Talmudic sages, says, "There are never less than 36 people who greet the Shekhinah, the indwelling presence of God." And he bases that on this verse from Isaiah, which reads partly, "Blessed are all of those who wait for him." The words for him in Hebrew is lo, lamed vav. The digits for 36. Lamed in numerology, in Hebrew numerology, gematria, stands for 30, and vav is 6. So it's a creative reading of that wonderful verse. Blessed are all of those who wait for God, for Him, Lamed Vav, or if you add a little bit of creative punctuation, and remember the Torah doesn't come with punctuation, so it's ripe for endless interpretations. We can also read it, blessed are those who wait, or who know that there is righteousness in the world and they are part of it, comma, 36. It's a creative rendering, but it's one that grabbed the hearts of the medieval Hasidim. And within that culture, these secret people are known to be ones whose acts are good and compassionate. And yet, the clincher is, they don't know that they're among the 36. Their humility is supposed to be so great that were they to discover or believe that they were one of the 36, they would cease to be them. Therefore, any person who declared him or herself to be one of the hidden 36 righteous ones would obviously not be one. But the tradition says God knows who they are, and for their sake, He spares the rest of us. Rabbi Rami Shapiro writes, without the acts of loving kindness of these, quote, mythical 36 people, life on the planet would implode under the weight of human selfishness, anger, ignorance, and greed. In his book, The Sacred Art of Loving Kindness, Rabbi Shapiro suggests that cultivating the sacred art of loving kindness is to enroll oneself in the ranks of the Lamed Vavniks. It's a little bit counterintuitive with the notion of humility, but it's nonetheless a call to each one of us to participate in this work of loving kindness. He writes, the tipping point for maintaining human life on this planet is 36 people practicing the sacred art of loving kindness at any given moment. These need not be the same 36 people at each moment, however. I believe that people step into and out of the role of a Lamed Vavnik, and that at any given moment, 36 people are stepping in. He calls us to the same mission and offers this advice. He says, once you realize that the whole world could depend on you for its very survival, you will not lack in opportunities to serve. Just remember, you are a hidden saint. It is fine to invite others to join with you, but make sure you don't advertise what you think might be your own saintliness. While being a Lamed Vavnik is good for your soul, it doesn't get listed on a resume. The Torah portion is clear that Pharaoh is not among the Lamed Vavniks. His stubbornness, his arrogance, his cruelty, his tyranny, his self-proclamation as a god, and the worship that he enjoys from his people are ultimately short-lived and terribly damaging to his people. Judaism, in its normative, ideal version, celebrates the Lamed Vavniks, the 36 righteous at any point that are doing the true work of the soul, humbly, quietly, gracefully, very often anonymously. Our world has one less Lamed Vavnik in it. For those of you who knew my beloved adopted sister, Carol Huey, Carol was among the truly righteous of this world. It would be a long service if I attempted to even give you a fraction of her amazing works. But this was a person who was utterly selfless, although she did enjoy life to the full, with friends and travel, parties, meals, uncountable, all of them. We met Carol when I was 6, and my brother was 3. She was our babysitter and our instant big sister. She's been knitted into our lives for half a century, and her passing at age 66 is a gut punch. She'd had health troubles for a long time, but still. Carol was the kind of person who at Hanukkah would make sure to be with us at least one night, sometimes more than one. And those were often the nights that my brother and I would have invited friends over for latkes and dreidel and candle lighting. And Carol would make sure that by mid-afternoon she knew who was going to be there at my parents' house in the evening. Long before we had texting, she would call and make sure that she knew everybody that was going to be there. And after dinner, she would bring out the bag of gifts. And absolutely everybody would get something. And it was always perfect. And after everyone opened and enjoyed their first present, she'd say, "Round 2." And everyone would get something else. Unnecessary, but fabulous. One round of gifts wasn't enough for Carol. The gifts just kept coming. She took care of her siblings round the clock. Carol was the kind of person that made you feel that you were the only person in the world and that she had limitless time for you. That's a gift and an art that just so few people have. It would be impossible to count the number of times she picked me up from the airport these last 8 years and took me again to come home to LA. The time I've had with her at Ner Tamid because of Ner Tamid these last 8 years, another in my endless list of ways I'm grateful to Ner Tamid. My time with Carol in the car was just special, and even though sometimes could have done something else, she would say to me, to my mom, to President Charlotte, "Happy birthday, Charlotte. No, I want to pick you up, Shana. It's my contribution to Ner Tamid. And it's our special time together. We get caught up on the workings of the week." Carol was at every life cycle event for all of us. My kids' birthday parties, our birthday parties, their bar and bat mitzvahs, weddings. She gave one of the Sheva brachas at my daughter's wedding last year, where I had such a tiny group of people in attendance. For my own family and friends, we're a very small group, but my kids honored her with saying one of the 7 wedding blessings. My kids, when we would arrive in San Francisco, from the time they were old enough to know to come visit my parents when we were down here in LA all the time, they would say, the first thing they would say, "When are we going to the bookstore?" But even before then, they would say, "When are we seeing Auntie Carol?" I really could go on and on about her. My memories are all sweet. This was a person who gave to the world thousands of airport trips. Not just me, my parents, everyone else. Any time of the day or night. She gave the impression she didn't sleep much, and she didn't. Sometimes people like that don't sleep very much. She was fun. She was always game for whatever was going on. She loved theater and the opera, and she loved Shabbat. Often the first to sign up for our Shabbat dinners. Carol was a Lamed Vavnik. And the last thing that she was able to do on this earth, Thursday morning, after she'd been essentially unable to communicate for almost 5 weeks. Only a very little bit to let us know that she was still her and that she could smile and laugh still. But she was fading. And Thursday morning at 5 a.m., she called her sister, dear Veronica, and in a voice that sounded remarkably like her regular voice, she found the strength to ask her sister to go to the nearest bakery and order dim sum, buns and custards for the nursing staff where she had been in the hospital for 5 weeks. She wanted to make sure they were fed and thanked. You almost don't need to know anything else. That's the essence of this beautiful woman who called me her sister. To care for the caregivers is the essence of righteousness. We must not be fooled by anything else. That's why the world keeps spinning, for people like that. The tradition says that when one Lamed Vavnik passes away, a new one is immediately born. Or at least that someone else can step into the role that they were fulfilling. Let us each answer that call. There is so much good to be done. Zichrona livracha, and Shabbat Shalom.